guys, this is Christine from A Naturally Balanced Dog. Thank you so much for joining me today. And today we are going to talk about the health benefits to fermenting food and giving your dogs fermented foods. And so up until 1822, which is only 200 years ago, we didn't have refrigerators. So for me, that would be my great-great-grandparents didn't own a refrigerator. So storing and preserving food was a priority in order for our survival during those times. And one of the oldest and safest methods of preserving food is fermentation. The process of fermenting food is actually over 10,000 years old. And we eat fermented foods on a daily basis. Maybe you're not aware of some of the foods that you are eating are actually fermented. And so, for example, coffee, beer, wine, cheeses, a lot of the gourmet meats like salami, pepperoni, miso, sourdough bread, kefir, yogurts, and probably a fermented food that a lot of people are familiar with is sauerkraut. So over the years, since we've gotten refrigerators, we don't eat as much fermented foods because we have a new way to preserve our food. But actually what they found is there are so many health benefits to fermenting food that it's actually making a comeback, and it's trickling down into our dogs. In fact, there are companies that are out there that manufacture foods that are only fermented because of their great health benefits. And they use those fermented foods for a lot of dogs that have diseases or illnesses or simply digestion issues and skin and coat issues. And so fermented foods can help overall in so many different ways. And so what we've discovered is that fermented foods encourage the growth of certain organisms, which are bacteria that are beneficial for our bodies. And it helps us, and it helps with our immune system, and it actually aids in digestion. In fact, fermented foods provide beneficial bacteria that help with pre-digestion. And so they particularly break down the elements of like protein and carbohydrates. And in doing so, it makes it more easy for the body to digest and absorb vitamins and minerals. And so fermented foods can help an array of different dogs with any kind of dogs that have dietary issues, poor digestion, immune issues, senior dogs, dogs with, allergies. And so one of the things that I found that I thought was very interesting was that the bacteria that is found in the fermented food is not found in the vegetables themselves, but actually happens during the process of fermentation. In other words, the health benefits don't exist in the raw state, but rather in the decomposed state. So fermented foods actually unlock vitamins and minerals that are not found in its natural form. I thought that was very interesting. One of the reasons that I like to feed fermented foods to my dogs is because it offers a diversity in the gut bacteria, which is so beneficial to the immune system. And so many people aren't aware that the immune system is actually housed in the gut. But did you also know that 95% of serotonin is also produced in the gut, which means a healthy microbiome or a healthy gut, but it also aids in how you feel. It makes us feel good. And so it works for our dogs as well. So you might even consider utilizing fermented foods for dogs that are experiencing emotional imbalances to help with that gut bacteria, and through positive gut bacteria will also increase the serotonin, making them feel more happy. So as a thought, you could use use food in many different ways. So it's not just physical, but certainly you could use food from an emotional standpoint as well. And being that I work with dogs from a training aspect, I've always been fascinated how our gut and how what we feed our dogs, how that affects their ability to learn and how it contributes to their behavior. And so what I found is feeding a species appropriate diet and creating a healthy, diverse gut bacteria can actually change your dog's behaviors. In addition to the more obvious, which is going to be your dog's physical condition as well. So I know some people might consider and think that as we're putting these together, knowing that, having the good pre and probiotics, healthy, good gut bacteria in your dog can improve them physically as well as emotionally. And so you might even consider like giving your dog a probiotic pill instead of doing fermented foods. The difference between giving your dog a probiotic and giving them fermented foods is that the probiotic that you're giving might have trillions of healthy bacteria, but it only might be 3 to 5 different strains. Whereas fermented food is far more elaborate and diverse. The reason that this is important is that the more healthy bacteria you have, it begins to actually edge out the bad bacteria that's in the gut. Depending upon what you're eating can actually increase the bad bacteria or it can increase the good bacteria. So we want to eat the foods that are increasing the good bacteria, and by doing so, and you're putting these healthy bacteria into your gut, it begins to edge out the bad stuff, and then we begin to see less symptoms such as skin issues or allergy issues. As we mentioned, it can help with the immune system and so forth. And so we start to see these improvements in our dogs. And so that's where fermented foods is going to outweigh giving your dog a probiotic and a pill. And so you might ask, do I have to buy fermented foods? Well, you could buy your fermented food, but it's not that difficult to make. And so I wanted to share with you today how to prepare a simple sauerkraut that you can eat for yourself and certainly share with your dogs as well. And so let's go ahead and get that started. And so you can actually ferment a lot of different types of vegetables. And actually, I've seen people do fermentation for meat, which I think is kind of interesting. I haven't done that yet, but I am considering trying it out. I'd like to see how that works because I do canning, but I've never fermented meat before. So, but anyways, so you can ferment things like cabbage and parsley and dandelion roots. You could do asparagus, green beans, carrots, pickles, which is cucumbers, yogurt. So all of these are fermenting. But today we're actually going to make a sauerkraut together. And so let me get myself set up for that. Hi guys, so I'm back. And I have green cabbage and a red cabbage. We're going to add some carrots and some beets. And so that's what I was going to use for my sauerkraut. And so what you want to do here is you can use a knife, but I'm going to just go ahead and use the mandolin and cut my shred my cabbage. And so give me a second to do that. Okay, so basically, there are a couple of people that I've done some fermenting myself, but when I was learning, I did some research and stuff like that. I particularly liked Sandra Katz, who is a gentleman who wrote the book, The Art of Fermenting. He also has a website, which is called Fermenting Wild, Wild, Ferm, wildfermentation.com. Wildfermentation.com. And he's been around a while. And so what I've discovered is really there are a couple of different ways to do fermentations. Like some people say that you should, after during the fermentation process, it should be in the refrigerator. Some people said that it was okay to sit out on the counter if your house was between the temperatures of 60 and 75 degrees. And anything over the 75 speeds up the fermentation process, and the colder it is, slows that process actually down. And so, again, there were a couple of different people making recommendations. The other person I enjoy following is a guy from Home Pro Cooks on YouTube. If you haven't checked him out, but he talks about a lot of different food preps and cooking things, which I enjoy on his channel. And so the other thing that I found was interesting is again, in some recommendations, they said that salt was needed, and some people said that salt really wasn't needed. Salt in general is usually recommended to help extend the life of food. So I kind of feel that salt should be there, but usually what they were saying was it can be anywhere between 1% and 5%. And so that Sandra Katz, his recommendation was actually salted to taste. And so that's kind of where he was at. While another person was saying it's, 2.5 to 3 tablespoons of salt per 5 pounds of cabbage. And so they did theirs a little bit more precise. And so I kind of tend to be one of those people who like to wing things. Okay, so now that I have all of my cabbage chopped up, I'm going to put it into a bigger work area here for me. And so the other thing about salt is it actually helps to start breaking down the cabbage and starts to create this liquid. It starts to, through osmosis, it starts to pull the water out of your food. So I got the cabbage, and I'm going to just add some carrots to it as well. Now, as I said, I am going to add some beets, but I'm not going to do that to the end because I don't want to smash up the beets. So anyways, now I've got my cabbage, and what you're going to want to do here is just simply start smashing away. And so I'm going to add some salt here. And because I'm feeding it to my dogs, I am not going to go heavy on the salt. I actually would prefer it to be very lightly salted. And I am using, they usually recommend not using an iodized salt. And so I am using a Himalayan sea salt for this. And now what you're going to do is just keep crunching away on your cabbage here until you start to see it breaking down, and you'll eventually see that the water just starts to drip out of your cabbage. And so we'll show you that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and keep crunching here for a few. And so one of the other things is, again, there were a lot of differences that I seen as I was looking at people who were doing fermenting, is the recommendation for how long you actually have to ferment food. And so, again, the colder the temperature is, the slower the process is. And so it might take a little bit longer. And again, some people said that you could leave the jars out on the counter while they're fermenting, while others said to put them in the refrigerator. I tend to put them in the refrigerator just because I like to check it. And I'm afraid if I leave it on the counter, I might not think about it. But when I open the refrigerator and it's staring at me, I'll be like, oh, let's see how that's doing, right? So right now I could start to feel like it's getting more water. It's not water-based yet, but I could definitely feel that the texture of the cabbage is changing. And so the longer you have it ferment, the more acidy it is and the more sour, the more tangy the flavor is going to be. So some people say you can ferment anywhere from 3 to 5 days up to 3 to 4 months, depending upon the flavor. And so what you want to do is during the fermentation, you're going to keep kind of checking it. You're going to taste it and then see where you like it. Once you get to a point that you like it, then you're just going to bottle it up and then again keep it in the refrigerator. And you could keep fermented food in the refrigerator, for up to 6 months. And so anyways, there's some pieces in there that I didn't chop real good, but that's just the way it is. The other thing is, as you're working with the cabbage, is that once the texture that I can see little drops coming out, but not quite yet. So you should be able to kind of see the water really drip out of the cabbage. So this just takes a while. But the longer you squish it, that's kind of going to be the texture of your sauerkraut. My hands might need a break in a minute. So one of the things that Sandra Katz was saying is to start salting lightly, because you can always add salt, but you can't take it out. So I thought that to be interesting. And again, I think some of the recipes that were online were just personal recipes that they, that's how they made it. And so that was the recipe that they were sharing. So the other thing I found interesting is because, as I mentioned, I do canning. And when you're doing canning, everything needs to be sterilized. The counters, the jars, the lids, everything in the area should be very sterile. And that's because of botulism. And it has to do with the environment, and in the canning process, it kind of can create the environment where botulism could become an issue. Whereas in fermenting food, that's not an issue. And you don't need to be as sterile. It's the bacteria that is, of course, you don't want to be dirty or anything like that, but, just some soap and water. You don't have to dip things in hot water and sterilize them in the same capacity. But it is the bacteria that are in the environment that actually probably helps to aid in some of those healthy bacteria that are created through fermentation, because, you know, on top of the food has different, you know, food as in the cabbage or carrots or whatever, those have the bacteria. Anyway, still working on it. I still don't see any liquid dripping out, so I'm going to keep crushing. All right, a couple other things that I noticed too in different people's styles is some people crunched it until it became really watery. But I also think that depends on how much salt you put in. And then some people liked a particular texture of their sauerkraut, and they didn't want to smash it anymore, because obviously the more you smash it, it changes the texture of it. And what they did is just added water because they like that particular texture. Okay, I've been crunching here for a while, and I see a little bit of a puddle on the bottom. So you can see water coming out. So we're getting to a point, and I don't know if you could see that, but when I squeeze it, you can see the water coming out. All right. So the other thing that I am going to add in here is this would be the time you would want to add if you do any spices and things like that. But you want to do minimal on spices, because the longer it stays, the more robust that feeling, that taste can be. So what I'm going to do is add in here some turmeric. And I am just going to add a little bit. And I'm also going to add a little bit of ginger root, just a little, because I know ginger root could be super strong. So that's all I'm going to add in there. You can already smell it. But turmeric I love for the anti-inflammatory properties, as well as ginger. Ginger's good for digestion and the belly. Again, they work great together as for a lot of different purposes. So this is the jar I'm going to be using. I'm going to use this jar to start, and then I'll end up transferring it when it's finished into another jar, just because this was all that I had. So I just have some beets that I'm just going to add in here. Okay. So now we have some red cabbage and green cabbage, along with carrots and some beets. And I'm doing the beets in chunks. And then, of course, for the spices that I'm using is the turmeric and ginger root, which have so many healthy qualities to them. So I like to use them for their anti-inflammatory properties. They're beneficial in digestion. You want to smash this down once you start filling your jar. Holy mess, huh? So it gets a little messy, but I just want to say thank you. And if you guys are on YouTube or Facebook, please give us a little thumbs up. Come back to our channel if you're on YouTube. Leave a comment if you'd like, give us a thumbs up, and hit the subscribe button. I try to release videos on a weekly basis, for you to get some good, valuable information as to how to improve your dog's diet and things that you can do for them. So please like and subscribe. Share if you find this video to be beneficial and you want to share it with your other doggy friends. So that would be great. At this point, I don't have enough liquid. That's actually kind of, you'll keep smushing it down in there. And as I do, actually I do see some liquid raising up to the top here. This will be an interesting one. And so you'll want to be able to do this up until just under the lip. So you don't want to fill it all the way to the top. But the other piece is your cabbage and everything needs to be submerged under the liquid. And so I'm going to pour what liquid is in the bottle here, or the can, or okay. Like that. Now there's a couple of different ways. So I definitely see the liquid. I don't know if you can see that. I'm hoping you can. I've created quite the mess. Okay. The important piece here is that now you need to keep your sauerkraut, or your, not sauerkraut yet, but your makings of your sauerkraut submerged. It all needs to be under liquid. Anything that's sticking out can begin to grow, unhealthy bacteria. And so the recommendation is, while you're doing the fermentation, it's not uncommon to see yeast growth, like a yeasty, kind of like a milky white color on it. And people say that that's okay. Just skim it off the top and the rest is okay to continue to use. However, if you don't submerge it, you can definitely begin to grow mold. So the mold is going to have color on it. It's going to start turning black or like a gray or something like that. Then again, some people's recommendation was to swoop it off and to throw it away, or swoop that mold off and toss that part, and they still kept their sauerkraut. On the other hand, if it would grow mold, I would probably start all over again. But again, if it's just the yeast, then it's okay. So once you have got this, and I don't know if you can see, but there's quite a bit of liquid on the top now. It's pretty submerged, and I'm going to keep smashing this down a little bit, pushing the air out and bringing the liquid to the top, because as it ferments, it will continue to release liquid. Now you need to submerge it. And so they did have different forms of different things that they were using for submerging. One was to actually take the larger leaves of the cabbage and to kind of fold, and then to stick this across the top and keep that submerged below that. Others used a plastic bag which was weighted, and they put that inside, and it pushed everything down. And so what happens over the course of the fermentation, there's going to be little pockets of bubbles as it's releasing gases and so forth. And you need to be able to allow those gases to release. And so you don't want to put a lid, or some people put a lid on it, but you wouldn't screw it down. So basically what I've got is the cabbage leaves covering the top. Boop. Hope you could see that on the top there. So anyways, as you can see, it's really not that difficult to make. Now I am going to let this actually ferment for about 10 days. And so I'm going to put it in my refrigerator, and I'm going to take it out periodically to test it and just to taste and just to check to make sure that there's nothing growing on there that's not supposed to be on there. Now, if I feel like at a later time that I need to take these leaves off and put the bag in, then I will submerge from that. But for right now, the cabbage leaves will work fine. I'm going to leave it out for a little bit. You might be able to see some of the bubbles. But yes, anyways, so pretty simple. It's really not that difficult. It takes a little bit of time, but certainly something that you can do. And again, the benefit of fermenting your own food is going to increase those probiotics and those healthy bacteria into your gut and into your dog's gut, and is an excellent source of vitamins and minerals. And as I said, it helps to make food a little bit easier to digest and builds the immune system. So there's so many good healthy benefits to making and adding sauerkraut to your dog's diet. Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me today. It was a lot of fun going over and doing a little research and making some sauerkraut. As I said, I made a couple of batches before I joined us today. And I have enjoyed sauerkraut myself, and have been giving my dog sauerkraut for quite some time, but it's always been the store-bought. And so this is simple. It's a lot cheaper. I get to make it with the vegetables that I have on hand. And so, again, thank you so much, and we'll be talking to you soon. Take care now. Please like, subscribe, and share our video.